Okay, already it begins. I have a whole lot of things to say, and the Spirit saying, well, sing this other thing. So, y'all heard this before. Some of you have it committed to memory, so that I didn't have to remember every single word. David and I put it in our book several years ago, so that I can read it right now. And I'd like for us to take a deep breath as we listen to this. I read it every several months, because it keeps staying pertinent for me, and I wonder if it's going to be pertinent for you, for all that's going on in our world right now. This was written in September 2001, and it was written by the elders of the Hopi Nation in Arizona. There is a river flowing now very fast. It is so great and swift that there are those who will be afraid. They will try to hold on to the shore. They will feel they are being torn apart and may suffer greatly. No, the river has its destination. The elders say we must let go of the shore, push off into the river, keep our eyes open and our heads above water, and see who's in there with us, and celebrate. It's called the community in the water. See who's in there with you and celebrate. At this time in history, we are to take nothing personally, least of all ourselves. For the moment that we do, our spiritual growth and journey come to a halt. The time of the lone wolf is over. Gather yourselves. Banish the word struggle from your attitude and your vocabulary. All that we do now must be done in a sacred manner and in celebration. You know the last line? For we are the ones we've been waiting for. We are the community. We are the community of those who said, I'm going to be awake in this lifetime. We're a part of that community. Worldwide community. Who said no matter what, beyond culture, beyond religions, beyond economic differences, beyond educational differences, we're going to know the possibility is there for us to create a world that works for all. This community of people who know, maybe not know all the details of how it's unfolding, may not know exactly how, but they know.
Amen.
They know. So we're a part of that community. That's a pretty big community. So let's talk about this word, community. What does that mean? All of us? Everything. Friends. Tribe. Giving. Sharing. Loving. Unity.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah. Understanding. What? Strangers. Kindness. Inclusiveness. Humanity. Collaboration. Welcoming. Diversity. Compassion. Sharing.
Immigrants.
Oneness. Immigrants.
Forgiveness.
How many of you, I'm just curious, came from ancestry of immigrants who came to this continent?
I know.
My dad used to, when he would be approached by some of the Blauer Blutblatt Society. My dad had a great one-liner. Because he'd say, well, some of my people were on the boat, and some of my people met the boat. And that's true of a lot of us. So community. Here's the basic meaning, C-O-M-N, Latin, the prefix meaning, together with. So C-O-M-N, together with unity. Community, together with unity. Simply put, that's what it is. How big is the community? The resilient community. What does resilient mean?
Bounce back.
Bounce back. Flexible. Stretchable. Everybody say that. It's fun to say stretchable. Resilient community is stretchable, is flexible. So I'd like to tell you a story. It's another story that we put into the book years ago, and one of the reasons I put it into the book is I never want to forget it. And if you want to remember things, write your own little book. Sometimes I look at this little book and I'm so inspired by it, and I think, wow, that's pretty great. When you write in your journal, you write in your book, you have at the ready those things that will inspire and lift you up. So here's one of those stories that does it for me. Years ago, I was helping to facilitate an adoption with a little boy named Anthony from Santa Barbara. And it's a long, wonderful story. I'm just going to tell you one little snippet of it. We had to run for the airplane in Atlanta. Y'all have had that experience, right? It's a wonderful experience. So we missed the plane by that much, and we had a 4-hour layover. And I'm thinking, 6 years old, 4 hours layover. Oh, I'm so happy about that. And so we're in the waiting area, and almost immediately across the way in another waiting area, this little boy, about 3 years old, he did one of those weep and wail and gnashing of teeth things, you know, that kids do. And no matter what parents or anybody else does, it's like, it didn't help. You know, it was just, and I'm thinking, 4 hours. Here. It was holy water coming down my cheeks. So little Anthony, who I'm traveling with, he unzips his backpack, and out of it he pulls his Power Rangers, his trail mix, his coloring books, his crayons, and he forms a circle. You know, when all else fails, form yourself a circle. And he plops down in the middle of it on his belly, stretches out, and he starts coloring. And this little kid across the way is just like practicing Tarzan voice. It's like, and so Anthony stands up, looks over the way, and he goes, and the little boy walks over and he stands outside of the circle. And Anthony looks up at him and he says, "Don't you have any coloring books?" And the little boy goes, "No." And Anthony said, "Well," and he tears out a page, he scoots it over, he scoots over some of his crayons, and then he motions for the little boy to come into the circle. This little boy was standing outside the circle. You have to be invited into the circle. So the little boy plops into the circle, and Anthony says, "How old are you anyway?" And the little boy says, 3. Anthony looks up at me, rolls his eyes, and goes, "Figures." Now, it gets better. It gets better. That would have been enough. But over those next 4 hours, other little kids found their way. You know, if there's a circle happening, so the little kids, they would come over and they'd stand on the outside of the circle. And so they bring something from their backpacks. At that time, it was Power Rangers everywhere. And so the Power Rangers and the trail mix and the little things and the little things, and the circle kept getting pushed out and getting made bigger. It's a true story. And kids kept getting in the middle of it, and this went on for 4 hours, and all of the parents, they put down the magazines and the books. We didn't have our cell phones back then. This is late, early 90s, I think. The cell phones were like this big. That circle kept getting pushed out and made bigger as other little kids made their way over to the circle, and we adults, we just stopped and witnessed something that most of us are not able to do most of the time, and that is to make space for everybody.
Amen.
Now, we may not be able to make literal space for everybody in that waiting room, but y'all know where I'm headed, the community of the heart. Where do we stop pushing the circle out so more can get in? I'm just asking. It's not an easy question always. How do we continue to maintain the circle and community of the heart if our hearts are closed through fear? Mayor Baba said something very interesting. He said, true spiritual healing is when we release all of our doubts, our fears, and our hallucinations. So there's some hallucinating going on. There's some doubts and fears going on. So we just want to take a deep breath and to remember that we are being invited to maintain and hold and be the community of the heart, not just in this place that we call Unity Myrtle Beach. That's easy. We've got the Spirit here. We're talking about pushing the circle out to make it even bigger. I'm talking about the circle of our hearts first.
Yeah, plenty of practice.
So last week, Carlotta brought us a very important message. Not always an easy message to hear, of course. It's never an easy message to hear. But Martin Luther King, so young, asking this question, where do we go from here, chaos or community? He said, power at its best is love implementing the demands of justice. Love has to implement justice. Now, I used to know an old Pentecostal minister. I was actually married to him for a while. And he used to say, you cannot legislate righteousness. We can pass the laws, we can pass the legislation, but you can't make people have the understanding heart. You can't force it. So the laws help, the legislation helps, the amendments help, but really the community of the heart has to happen in us. So he went on to say this, justice at its best is love, correcting everything that stands against love. I had to read this several times before it all sank in. Justice at its best is love correcting everything that stands against love. And I know some of us don't like the word correcting, so I changed it. So we can use words like love, infusing everything that stands against love, or transforming or reconciling everything that stands against love. So what does the community of the heart do? This might be one of the formulas. What does the community of the heart do? We don't know all the answers. We don't know all the ways, what the next step, what the right steps, what the right decisions are for what our world is experiencing right now in our country. But we can consider what we're standing for. And today I want us to ponder standing for community. And even, again, we don't know all the ways to unfold the right and perfect decisions and actions. We don't have to know. We don't have to know. That's one of the best things I ever learned. To say, I don't know. Everybody say that. I don't know.
I don't know.
I mean, isn't that a relief? We don't have to know all the details. So Scott Peck This is one thing he did know before he passed. He left us this great piece of the formula. He said, for the reality is that there can be no vulnerability without risk. Right? And there can be no community without vulnerability. And there can be no peace and ultimately no life without community.
Oh, amen.
No man is an island. So when it was time for me to get off the workshop trail, the Unity Circuit trail that I've been on since 1981, I prayed about what I wanted. And my list went something like this. I want to continue my healing work, my teaching work, my counseling work, my speaking work. And I want to be a part of a community. Because it's a traveling minister, you're not always home a lot to connect with your community. So that was my list. Healing, teaching, counseling, speaking, community. And then at the bottom of the list it said, and I don't want to lead a church. Because I knew Spirit was going to be thinking, well, that's a church. The point is, I prayed for community. Have you ever prayed for community? And you get to stretch so much when you give yourself over to community. I've said it 100 times. You know what I'm going to say next? Charlene can probably say it. It's been the biggest learning curve of my life.
Oh.
To be connected with community. Now think about it. We have to be vulnerable to connect with community. We have to take risk to connect with community. We have to know ourselves as a part of the community, to participate in the community. You want to experience the greatest spiritual journey of all? Give yourself over to relationship and community. I don't know any hermits right now who are waking up. It's all being done in relationship and community. Millard Fuller said this, for a community to be whole and healthy, it must be based on people's love and concern for each other. He founded Habitat for Humanity. So, who is the community when we're thinking about our community? And how big does the circle get? How much can we push the circle out? Right now we're looking for a new location. This building's for sale. So we're talking about expanded space, but that's not the biggest expansion that's happening. The biggest expansion is how much can our hearts hold what is true and what is right for this moment. And the answers are not always going to be easy. So now we go to goose therapy. Do with that what you will. So as each goose flaps its wings, it creates an uplift for the birds that follow.
Amen.
Creating greater flying range than if each flew alone. Y'all knew that. Have you applied it to your own goose nest? We need one another's uplift, the draft of those flying with us. Look around you and see who's in the water with you. Look in the community and see who's here with you. And celebrate. And we all have more than one community, more than one organization with whom we're affiliated. What are the communities that we want to see grow, deepen, expand? It's not about a bigger space. It's about expansion of the spirit and the energy of being the light of the world. That's what it's about. So who's in your community? So whoever's in there with you, in the water, in the air, you're a goose, you're flying, your wings, your presence can be uplifting to the other people flying around you.
Silly goose is one that flies by himself.
Silly goose. What is silly goose? The silly goose is one who flies by himself. When we share common vision and a sense of community, we travel more easily. what holds us together. So in the book of Romans, I know you all know this by heart, but I'm going to read it for you. For as in one body we have many members, and the members do not all have the same function, so we, though many, are the body of Christ. Christ meaning that awakened consciousness, that one presence. And individually members of one another, having gifts that differ according to the grace given to us. Let us use them. If prophecy, in proportion to our faith. If service, in our serving. The one who teaches in his teaching. The one who exhorts in his exhortation. Those are the geese that honk a lot. Coming up behind you. The one who contributes in generosity. The one who leads with zeal. And the one who does acts of mercy with cheerfulness. In the community, everybody knows what their talent, their gifts, their expression of spirit. Everybody knows what they're called to do. On the occasion that we forget, however, here's a clue. If you don't know what to do, how to be a part of community, think about it this way. What do you have that most matches what the world most needs now? What do you have in your communities that matches what that community most needs? If you know how to paint a mural, you show up and you paint a mural like Joanna Adams did.
What are you hoping nobody will ask you to do?
If you're a great cook, you come on potluck Sundays, you bring food. If you get here early on Sunday mornings, like Lloyd, you take the sweeper and the dustbin and you go out and sweep up the cigarette butts in the parking lot. You do what you know to do. You have the talents and the creative skills. You show up and you do what you're called to do. That's what community is about. And finally, Charles Fillmore, our Unity co-founder, he said, where in Jesus' teachings shall we find a formula to offset, to dissolve, to meet and nullify the atomic bomb? He put this in a book called The Atom-Smashing Power of the Mind.
Right on.
So the atomic bomb was his example of this, but you can fill in the blank with whatever you want. When I was growing up, the atomic bomb seemed like the scariest thing. So where in Jesus' teaching shall we find a formula? We like our formulas. We want to know. To offset, to dissolve, to meet and nullify the atomic bomb. What else shall we put in the blank instead of atomic bomb?
Someone you don't like.
What? Someone you don't like?
Fear.
Fear.
Hatred.
Hatred.
Your personal insight community that you're growing out of darkness into light.
So, growing out of darkness into light.
Within yourself so that you can have the understanding heart of the whole community.
So put that in the blank. How can you nullify the atomic bomb? What about nullifying old generational patterns that keep us stuck in prejudice, bigotry, hatred? Just saying. What about nullifying the effect of old generational patterns that no longer serve us in our own lives and in the lives of humanity? So fill in the blank the way you will. And then he gave this quote from Jesus, "Thou shalt love the Lord thy God with all thy heart, with all thy soul, with all thy strength, with all thy mind," and here's the clincher. Everybody together? Thy neighbor as thyself. Jesus went on to say, this is not the number 9th commandment. This is not the 33rd commandment. He said, this is the great and first commandment. It's the one that everything else is hinged on. Jesus spoke to a lawyer, and you know how they can the lawyer said, just tell me what the most important one is. Just cut to the chase. Just tell me what the greatest commandment is. And this was the formula that Jesus gave. That we love the one presence, the Most High consciousness, the awakened consciousness, that's what we reach for. We reach to have the awakened consciousness, to know ourselves as one with the one presence. With all our strength. How much strength is that? And I want to give myself over to this Most High awakened consciousness with all my mind. I want to train my mind. If I'm sitting in meditation and I have a crazy wacko thought come through, I breathe and simply observe. There's that crazy thought again of being separate from my community of the world and the human family. There's that crazy thought, and I keep breathing. And I deepen into another thought of oneness. This is the great commandment. This is where Jesus told us about community. To love your neighbor as yourself. Because we stop, somewhere along the way we get it. Cooperation works better than competition. And it works better when we know all have their basic needs met rather than just a few. We know it works better. We just may not know always how to do it. But we have incredible minds, incredible intellects, incredible creativity. So as we're opening our hearts and minds to know next right and perfect step for our lives and the lives of this church and the lives of the world, we want to keep this uppermost in our consciousness. Who is the community? Who is the beloved community? Who is included? Who is excluded? And if we're still drawing a boundary line, then we might have a little more work to do. Because as far as I can tell, Jesus gave us a clear formula. As far as I can tell, we get paralyzed when we don't know what to do, so I'm just going to suggest that we keep breathing, keep looking at the formula, and keep pushing out the edges of our circles with our trail mix and coloring books. So let's take a deep breath. In that deep breath, let us know ourselves as the light of the world. With that deep breath, let us know that our hearts and our minds are willing to keep opening with every breath, every moment. Stay open, stay open. Heart of mine, mind of mine. Stay open, keep breathing. We keep pushing the edges of the community in our minds. Out, out, out. And we call forth the one presence to stand with us as perhaps we go forward in evolved consciousness in ways that we haven't even imagined yet. They're the ones we've been waiting for. I ask you to touch your own heart and say that. We're the ones we've been waiting for.
We're the ones we've been waiting for.
And so it is, and so will it be.